Today, and we're also joined by former NYC Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik. Bernie, now according to NBC News, that report we just showed you, Morgan is 44 years old. He's an ex-con, a former Catholic, and yet he was radicalized, he says, through the internet. Is there anything, again, going back to my last question, if you're going to have somebody like this, is there anything that can be done short of shutting down these websites to prevent this from happening?
No, honestly, John, it's not only the websites. There's recruiters in the mosques. There's recruiters all over the country. There's recruiters in social media. They're recruiting internationally. If anybody that's following the momentum of ISIS over the last several months, they have enormous flocks floating towards Syria and Iraq, coming from the international community. So the recruitment efforts, they're doing quite well. And shutting down the media sites, it's not going to stop the overall recruitment. I think it will hamper their ability to communicate with sympathizers, supporters, and some of those radicalized or homegrowns here in the United States.
There's some strange behavior behind a lot of this stuff. Doing an interview with NBC News, and also federal investigators say they were aware of Morgan's because he tweeted allegiance to the head of ISIS, but suppose he kept that quiet. I mean, in certain situations, it seems like some of these folks want to get caught, maybe to become martyrs or voices, like this guy did on NBC News here. But, again, there's always a concern that word might not leak out. And of course, we remember very well back in 2010, there was that car bomb that failed in Times Square right there in Manhattan.
You know what, John? Some people are just morons. They're going to put it out there. But you have a whole bunch of these people that are basically sleepers that aren't going to be out there. They're not going to put it out in public. There's a way to monitor certain Twitter profiles without following the person on Twitter, so we wouldn't even know who's looking at their sites. We would have an inability to look at that. That being said, it's really going to depend on our intelligence capabilities with the Bureau, with the FBI, and the CIA, and some of the others, to sort of, monitor, track, identify these people as we can. But the problem is, you're going to miss something. And hopefully, whatever we miss, they fail, just like the Times Square bomber.
Well, you do have to have that dragnet, that digital dragnet, and perhaps that's why we are not hearing as much today about the NSA surveillance stuff as we were a while back. And of course, we were showing images there of Faisal Shahzad, who was the guy who tried to plant a bomb there in Times Square. And who knows if he would have been caught earlier if social media had been as prevalent in 2010 as it is today. But again, it seems from what you're saying here, Mr. Kerik, is that ISIS is winning the digital battle in this fight to recruit jihadis.
Well, they're using it quite successfully. I mean, think about it. With one tweet retweeted over 30, 40 people, you may hit 10, 12, 20,000 people. So depending on their following. So you have to make sure that you're up on these things. And I think, listen, we're in a far better position today in the intelligence community than we were in 2001. So, and we're getting better constantly. The problem we're going to have is if we slip and miss something. And, unfortunately, you can't be 100% all the time.
That's absolutely true, and you can never take a day off. And one of the other things I think that was somewhat striking when you look into the details of this specific warning coming from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI is that there were specific instructions that told these lone wolves, lone rats, whatever you want to call them, not to seek approval from a higher up, which is something I think is much different from the old school Al-Qaeda tactics that were employed in the past.
Yeah, this is a direction just to go out and do something that creates havoc or creates, the threat, the fear, creates death and destruction. This has been their end game all along. But given the ability they now have to send out a message like that and hit 15, 20,000 people, law enforcement, the media, they have to be prepared, and they have to recognize these threats are out there and take them very seriously.
Well, at least it gives us some comfort knowing to hear you say we're somewhat better prepared today on a digital front than we were, but still concerning on the same. Bernard Kerik, thanks so much for being with us. We're back with more.